If your child is struggling with learning, or you're worried that they might, this conversation could be an opportunity for positive change. I sit down with Dr. Steve Underwood, the founder of Veritas Educational Consulting. Steve has spent over 20 years in education, from teaching in rural Idaho to working at the state level, helping Idaho's lowest performing schools transform their reading instruction. His work is grounded in the science of reading, which is based on decades of proven research. Steve was a struggling reader himself. He dealt with poverty and a severe stutter, and he knows firsthand what it's like to be in the lowest reading group. During our conversation, Steve discusses research that really made me think. There can be a 10,000 word vocabulary gap between kids by kindergarten, and it's not caused by schools or genetics. It's caused by how much we talk to our kids, and our phones are making it worse. Very glad to have you on the Family IT Guy podcast.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
And you and I met, and you were telling me about your views and your research and studies on how kids learn.
Yeah.
And what sets up kids for success.
Yeah.
And so I really want to talk about that today. That's been buzzing in my mind ever since we spoke.
Sounds good.
And but I thought first maybe you could tell us a bit about your background and
Sure.
so leading up to, why you do what you do and where you've come from.
Yeah. As you mentioned in the bio, I was a struggling reader. I grew up in a situation where we kind of had situational poverty, you would call it. My family had some struggles at that point in life. And so, low income, et cetera. When I was in elementary school learning how to read, I had a very, very bad stutter. And technically you don't get over a stutter. You just learn how to deal with it. So I still have a stutter, but I know how to manage it.
Amazing.
And so, so learning to read was very hard. I knew I was a bad reader. I was in the buzzards group or whatever the lowest group was,
Oh, that's the group where you're like, you need additional help. And
yes. Yeah. So I knew I was in the group that was like the low reading group. And so, anyways, that was a challenge. And yet on the flip side, I was always a good student and ended up learning how to read and doing just fine. But that struggle with reading impacted who I was all the way into adulthood, still does. And so I went to college. I did not intend to be a teacher. My mom and my older sister were teachers, and it was I stumbled into it, which is probably a whole nother story. But yeah, became a teacher, taught here in Idaho for many years in a rural school district, and then had the opportunity to get recruited to the state level to work on a statewide literacy grant where we provided consulting and professional development to teachers and principals and other types of school leaders across Idaho. And
interesting. So with the Department of Education?
Yeah. So in the early 2000s, there was a federal push to improve literacy across the nation. It's called Reading First. And the school that I had been teaching at was a recipient of that grant, learned a lot. That's where the evidence comes in. There's over 100 years of evidence on how to teach reading effectively.
Okay,
and so we put that into practice. And then, after doing that as a teacher for a few years, I got noticed by the people that were leading the grant at the state level, and they invited me to join the team. And so that was fascinating. Learned a lot about how to help others with systems and school improvement and that kind of thing. So
that's very interesting, because I am always fascinated by how to get large groups to, be on the same page, let alone even know who each other are. And I'd imagine at the state level, that must be so difficult, because you've got how many districts are in Idaho? Do you know?
It's approximately 250, if I remember right. It's been a while.
Whoa.
Yeah.
250 districts.
Yes. And that includes the charter schools and so forth. I think if I remember right, in terms of normal districts, there's probably more like 150 or 160. It's been a while, so my numbers might be a little off.
But it's a lot.
It's a lot.
You're coordinating and collaborating with a lot of groups and a lot of interests and a lot of, I imagine, preferences and histories. And
yes. Yeah, especially, in education, there's a big concept around local control, as among other policy type things. Mm-hmm. But in education in particular, you have a truly federal system in that regard. You have a local governing board, a state governing agency, and often board, and then federal policy. And all three of those have different and varying levels of authority over the local education system. And so yeah, it's an interesting process.
So okay, so now you're working on this literacy grant.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to optimize literacy outcomes? Is that the general idea?
Yes. So that grant program was part of a national push to identify the lowest performing schools and the highest poverty schools. So it kind of combined those two factors and find ways to improve literacy among K-3 students, because essentially there's research out there. Back in the day, they would say if a student isn't reading on level by the end of third grade, there is a high percentage chance that they will never learn to read proficiently. And then a couple years later, that actually got bumped down to first grade. If students are not reading on level by the end of first grade, it's not very likely that they'll catch up.
Wow. And is that because each year gets progressively more difficult and then they get progressively more behind?
Yes, exactly. So basically there's a couple different domains, and I can get into that if you're interested, but there's a couple different aspects of learning to read. And so one of those aspects is predominantly taught in K and first grade. And so if you don't get that, it's like your math facts. If you don't learn your math facts, then math gets increasingly harder and harder and harder because you're not as fast with the stuff. And if you're not dealing with the things, then you're not learning as much as quickly, et cetera. And so there's this principle called the Matthew effect that comes out of sociology originally, the idea that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Oh, okay.
And so that's
called the Matthew effect.
That's called the Matthew effect.
Okay.
Yep. And so in literacy, that gets applied to literacy outcomes. The less literacy you know, the farther and farther you get behind.
Wow. And I mean, maybe it's an obvious or silly thought in my head, but it just occurs to me that, like, gosh, I guess that makes a lot of sense, because without literacy, that's your foundation to absorb and communicate and learn.
Yep.
And do other things. Like, is it fair to say that all the other things sit on top of literacy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Even mathematics outcomes, for example, if you think about what it takes to learn algebra, for instance, you need significant reading skills to engage with and access typical algebra problems, because there's a lot of story problems and words and context and language that you have to make sense of.
Yeah.
So if you're struggling to read those types of things, not only will you struggle with the literacy academic domains, you'll struggle with all the other domains too.
Wow. So by first grade. And how do you, okay, so the sort of the initial goalpost is like peer level competency by first grade?
Yeah.
Or how do you, what does that look like?
Right. So there's this concept in literacy instruction called the simple view of reading. And what that does is it defines literacy or reading learning in a very simple manner as an equation that says there's two basic things: word recognition and language comprehension. And that's on the one side of an equation. And so word recognition is the ability to recognize and interact with the written code on a printed text. Language comprehension is the sum total of your thinking processes and how you're able to engage with oral language, so conversations, all that kind of thing. It's completely independent of printed text. And so forth. And so the equation in the simple view of reading is word recognition times language comprehension equals the amount of reading comprehension that you have. So basically, reading comprehension is the product of these two things, and they're multiplicative. They're exponentially connected.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. And so, okay, so you do one times the other. How do you measure each piece? How do you assign? Are you assigning a score? You
can, yes. So there's lots of different ways to measure it, but essentially in word recognition is what you'd call a constrained skill. Like there's a limited amount of what you need to learn to do that. And so you can measure very specifically things like phonemic awareness, like the degree to which kids can recognize, articulate, and manipulate spoken sounds. Like in the word pen. Pen has 3 sounds, p, n. And so like you, as a child, you learn how to play with sounds and you differentiate between pen and pet. There's only one sound difference in those words.
Oh yeah.
The last sound, right? And so you have to be able to distinguish those things, because those are the building blocks of language and phonics, the connection between sounds and spellings. And so once you learn one, you can learn the other. And so, you can measure kids' ability to deal with phonemic awareness. You can measure their ability with phonics. Like, are they at a basic level where they only know basic sound spellings, like the B sound can be represented by the letter B, or the K sound can be represented by C, K, or blank CK.
Q or something sometimes.
Yeah. And so like there's complexity, increasing complexity in that domain, and you can measure where in the sequence kids are at in that domain.
Oh, wow.
Language comprehension is totally different. Language comprehension is an innate skill, and it's an unconstrained skill. So what I mean by that is like babies, even before they're born, they pick up skills with language comprehension. So babies can understand what their parents are saying even while they're in the womb, right? And so then when they're born, they slowly pick up language, and they learn that language, over time, and eventually their bodies catch up and their mouths can start to articulate the language that they already understand.
Yeah.
Right. And so what that does is language comprehension is like the sum total of all the language experiences and encounters you've had with conversations or books that people have read to you, or, any thoughts you've engaged with, experiences and so forth. So different domain.
Interesting. So is it fair to say unique skill sets?
Yeah.
That very closely tie together and support each other and play together.
Yes.
But they both have to be developed intentionally.
Yes. Yeah. So the language comprehension can develop unintentionally, but when you're in school, if you don't have some like minimum prerequisites or minimum kind of life experiences, then educators do have to kind of figure out where you're at and go back and kind of fill some of those life experiences, like with read alouds or conversations or, field trips or, whatever. There's a lot of different ways to do that.
So just to ask the sort of extreme version of the scenario, like, so if you have this grant, you're going in and you're studying across all these schools around the state. Yeah. I'm guessing you're taking baselines, like where people are at, where kids are at.
Yeah.
So if a kid is not caught up by the end of first grade, then they're kind of set up for quite a struggle. Yeah. And it's unlikely that they'll catch up fully. Yeah. Did you find anything? Were you able to see any outliers of, these kids were able to actually catch up, and like what did you guys end up finding that was effective, or did you find anything that was effective?
Yeah. I'm going to kind of tweak my response to that, not answer it exactly the way you've asked it. So like the problem typically is that schools historically don't know how to teach the word recognition side of the equation. They don't know how to teach phonics and phonemic awareness.
Oh, really? See, here I was thinking that would have been the thing that schools were teaching best.
No, it's an interesting history of what has happened there, but basically in the 1700s, 1800s, phonics was a very well-known and established practice. But in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was this kind of philosophy that started to come into the public schools in the United States, where people believed different things about literacy that were not evidence-based. And so specifically, if you've ever heard of the Dick and Jane series from the time when our parents and grandparents were kids. Like,
I think so, but I can't quite recall it.
yeah. So Dick and Jane was like this popular teaching series, like school book series that had these two characters that was like, see Dick, see Jane, see Dick run, see Jane run, see Spot the dog, see Spot run, you know? And so it was built on this idea that like learning printed language is just a matter of memorization. Kids already have the oral language. And so now they just have to memorize the shapes and patterns of the printed words. And so that they totally blew phonics to the side. And most schools in the United States stopped teaching phonics at that point and went with this, what became known as a whole language approach. And
interesting.
Yeah. And it really screwed our American education system pretty bad. And,
wow.
And like I said, there's over 100 years of research on literacy.
Yeah.
And for various reasons, that research kind of got put to the side. And it wasn't until more recently, it was in the last 5 years, I'd say, that a national spotlight has started to kind of spotlight the fact that whole language model was not good for kids.
Oh, wow. In the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So this is fresh.
Right. So like that grant that I was part of, I between 2003 and 2010, that was from the federal level. That had a series of history and policy kind of predicates. Is that the right word? Predecessors. So like in the 80s, there was this national book that got attention called, Why Johnny Can't Read. There's a whole bunch of stuff at the national level, like literacy is not good in America. What do we do about it? Et cetera, et cetera. And then eventually when the No Child Left Behind Act occurred in 2001, that was the big thing, is like, we need to do something about literacy. And so like that policy, that federal policy said, in order to get these funds, you have to implement scientifically based reading research. And so,
oh, wow. Okay. That sounds sensible.
It sounds sensible.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And
cool.
so it was interesting. And so, but it was from the feds. And so
there's always a gotcha in there somewhere.
Yeah. There were people that hated it because it was like they were being told what to do.
Yeah.
By the time the grant program ended, I would say probably 70% of the teachers and educators involved loved the program after 5-6 years of hating the program.
Yeah.
And then policy wise, it was a bipartisan policy to begin with.
Oh, okay.
Like tremendous support in Congress.
Yeah.
But by 2010, when it got defunded, there was lots of policy argumentation around it. And it was caused by other things in society.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that kind of put that to the side for, I'd say 8-9 years. And it wasn't until, maybe 3-4 years ago, there was a journalist, Emily Hanford, who, I can't remember if she had a child or what the motivating factor was, but she came across this thing where most schools were following these bad policies, these bad non-evidence-based practices. And she's like, what the heck's going on? And she did this huge expose and a podcast called, what was it called? Sold a Story. It was called Sold a Story.
Sold a Story.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's about the background and of all this whole language stuff and what the evidence actually shows. And so a lot of people have had a spotlight in the last couple of years on the science of reading and trying to understand it and implement it effectively.
Excellent. And has the stuff that you were involved with in the 2000s, has that been influential in trying to pick it back up or trying to use that as evidence that like, hey, we should try this again?
Exactly. Yeah. Because, we called it then scientifically based reading research. Now they call it the science of reading, but it's the same thing. And so basically the research, I would say, has been 90-ish% 95% settled in terms of how you
Oh.
teach K1, K3 students how to read effectively.
Yeah.
And over the last 20 years, it's only been reaffirmed, and maybe a little bit deeper nuances have been uncovered, but nothing has changed. It's still the same as what we would have done 20 years ago.
Yeah, like the original research is still valid in its original form. Kind of
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
So now it's a matter of getting it out there, getting it sort of re-embedded.
Yes.
And is that the sort of thing that you work on nowadays?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. So yeah, I took I ended up doing consulting work for a regional consulting firm, and then I spent 5 years working for a large nonprofit educational assessment company. And then just a few months ago, I started my own independent consulting gig, and that's where I'm focusing on is
excellent
literacy work.
Oh, so you've just recently struck off like totally on your own.
Yes.
Ooh, how's that?
It's good. I mean, I've got some really good initial momentum here,
Yeah.
So, my portfolio is starting to fill out, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I would say it's a very interesting time in education. Like, if you were to ask somebody else, they might say this is probably the scariest time to be an independent consultant, but because of a lot of federal policy stuff that's going on.
Oh, right. And all the changes to the way that
Yes.
agencies are structured and
Exactly.
funding is organized and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Because like people in my kind of professional world have largely been funded by federal grants and federal programs, and whether those go directly to service organizations or to schools and then back to people like me to help out.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And like just a couple weeks ago, they announced like the pause of a number of grants that go directly to schools. One of them is specifically for professional development, and that's what a lot of schools use for to bring people like me in to help. So it's been an interesting season.
Well, that is interesting. Yeah, because professional development would be the very thing that would bring in new ideas,
Yes.
right? Or old ideas that
Yes.
like, hey, like that we should, focus on these things. And
Yes.
so the professional development funds will either just not be there, or they'll have to be built into a state's budget or a district's budget or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the jury's still out about whether or not those funds will come through. Like legally, Congress has already set the bill, allocated the money, et cetera. Like legally,
Right.
it's all there.
Yeah.
It's just that the executive branch has paused and is reviewing it before they send the dollars out. So it's interesting. I don't know. It's an uncertain time, but at the same time, like, back to what I was saying about scary versus good time, whether I'm an independent person or whether I'm working for a big education company, we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
So,
it's all contractor dollars and
yeah.
budgets for third-party resources.
Yes. Yes.
Who knows who. And
exactly.
yeah, it's still a relationship game, I'd imagine, like everything else.
Yep.
Man, excellent. And so, let's see. Okay, so the thing that you mentioned to me when we first met was that one of the primary factors for setting a kid up for success was the frequency of conversation.
Yeah.
Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell us about that? Because
Yes.
that's the thing that really stuck in my mind. It's like, oh, I got to talk to you.
Yes.
So like, because I think as we'll get into, I think there's a lot of overlap with, because I'm focusing on the internet.
Yep.
How do kids interface with the internet, stay safe, and get set up for success?
Yeah.
And so this vocabulary thing or frequency of conversation thing perhaps ties in. So give us some background on that. Like, how does that work?
So yes. So this connects to that simple view of reading that I was talking about earlier, the language comprehension versus word recognition as being foundational for reading comprehension, right? So there was a study done in, I think it was the early 90s, and a book that was written called Meaningful Differences by two authors named, last name's Hart and Risley. And basically they had this longitudinal year after year study where they followed kids that were along a spectrum of different kind of socioeconomic statuses. And what they found was that and again, these are generalizations. It's not 100% one for one, but in
Yeah.
general, students that came from lower socioeconomic backgrounds had much less conversation in their households than kids from higher socioeconomic families. And so like an example of what that would look like would be, two families go to the same grocery store, buy exactly the same thing. They're both buying apples, right?
Yeah.
And the family that is, higher socioeconomic tends to have more conversations like, the kid picks up the apple and mom says, "Oh, that's an apple." Well, yeah. What do you know what kind of apple that is? Oh, that's a Red Delicious. That green one over there, that's a Granny Smith. What color is that apple? And it invites the kid to say red or engage, right? So like you're having conversation about the content and the world around you, right?
And what ages are you imagining as you say this? Like, how old are these kids that were
babies?
Because this is initial stuff, I'm guessing,
Yes.
based on what color is the apple.
Right.
And
Babies, toddlers, etc. So like this type of conversation is happening before kids are even able to speak much on their own.
Right. The very foundational.
Yes. And then that kind of conversation in those same kind of households ends up getting more into like more logic, more reasoning, more kind of like cause and effect type conversations, And so conversely, in a family where you've got a lower socioeconomic background, generally speaking, those conversations are more, along the lines of they're going by the apples. Kid grabs the apple and parent says, don't touch that. We don't need that right now.
Yeah.
Move along. Nothing else said.
Let's go.
Yes. And so like this very short, brief interaction, sometimes it's a negative interaction versus this like language rich interaction. What that does by the time kids entered kindergarten, and that's what the name of that book came from, Meaningful Differences. By the time the two different kids get to kindergarten, you have what they estimated was a 10,000 word difference in vocabulary for each child. So one had significantly more vocabulary and language experience than the other one.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how is that in relative terms? 10,000 words, and what might their total vocabulary be? Like, how big of a difference is that?
It's huge. I mean, so like I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I would say it'd probably be like 12,000 compared to 2,000 type of thing. Like,
whoa.
Huge.
Oh, right. So
Huge.
It's not compared to a 6-figure number. It's compared to a number that's really close. So it's like significant difference.
Right. Because, I mean, by the time and again, I can't remember the exact numbers, but by the time a child is done with high school, for example, they need to have a vocabulary that's somewhere between like, I need to look this up, but it's like 150 to 200,000 words. And so like when you're starting with 10,000 versus 2, and then you have that Matthew effect kicking in, and you have this gap where you're not able to engage with reading, which is where the rest of that vocabulary will typically come from. You end up just not being able to grow in the way that you need to grow.
And so the Matthew effect of the rich get richer and the poor get poorer in the context of literacy is like applied directly in that. That's because for me, whenever I'd heard that phrase in the past, I just thought about bank accounts.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a downstream effect, but like it's your bank account of words.
Yes.
How big is your vocabulary bank account?
Yes,
of
exactly.
sorts? Rich get richer, poor get poorer kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so so you come into kindergarten with a 10,000 word difference that could perhaps be as big of a 12K compared to 2K kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then now there's a gap that if this is a 10,000 word gap, and then is it fair to say that then they get into first grade and then the gap is bigger? Yes. And then the second grade and the gap is bigger, and then the gap is bigger, and then that's why they can't catch up.
Exactly.
Wow. And are you... So you've talked a little bit about some of the stuff that's been going on over the past 20 years, kind of with funding coming and going,
Yeah.
what's on and off, and trying to help kids address these things.
Yeah.
Is the idea to address them in these earliest stages? Was the grant money focused on like, let's get like the very youngest kids, or are you trying to also readdress some of the kids that have already been behind?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, in a typical K-12 school setting, they're trying to address it all. However,
Yeah. Right. What can you do for everybody?
Yeah, but most of the effort, the biggest bang for the buck is K1, K3.
Yeah.
Because you want to be preventative focused.
Right. It's a lot easier to be preventative.
Yes.
Than to be like responsive or reactive or trying to put a Band-Aid on the wound.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are things you can do for kids once they get older, and even adults. I mean, there are adults who struggle with reading, and there are things you can do, but a lot of times what it comes down to for those older grades is you're almost trying to help them compensate rather than catch up at that point. So like compensate so that they don't get any further behind, and so that they can kind of live and be at least moderately successful with what's in front of them.
Yeah. Like as the gap grows, maybe you slow the pace of the growth of the gap or something.
Right.
And you mentioned situational poverty in your background. Mm-hmm. And then I remember you telling me about generational poverty the last time we talked also, and how this ties in, like you were talking about the way that the different conversations will happen at the grocery store.
Yeah.
It just naive on my part. Can you tell us a bit more about the difference between situational poverty and generational poverty, and how like one might influence the literacy outcomes different than the other?
Yeah, totally. So situational poverty is where it's like your family, your parents, may not have themselves grown up in poverty. They may have just fallen on hard times, but they themselves have that rich kind of language background. They have lots of life experience, lots of background knowledge, etc. And so in my example, for instance, my mom was had a college degree. She was one of the first in her family to get a college degree, but she was educated, and so she just intuitively knew that she should be having these kind of conversations with me as a child, and so she had the mindset. Generational poverty is the idea that like for generations, your family and your ancestors have lived in an impoverished state. And so because of that, you've kind of inherited the gaps that your ancestors had, because they didn't know any better, perhaps. And so they did the best, with their kids did the best with their kids, et cetera, until you. And so when you have that kind of social family background, you need somebody who breaks the cycle, right? Mm-hmm. You need somebody who has enough wisdom and knowledge to realize like, oh, I have to do things differently, and then starts to do those things differently.
I mean, that's massive.
Yeah.
I think about that sometimes, that it through my own personal biases, it seems like the world is organized in a way nowadays where there's opportunities that may not have existed in the past, just due to the internet, due to various, global economic conditions or, regional economic conditions. And there's these opportunities to kind of break out or break free of some of these patterns and things. But I mean, looking back on like the literacy thing, if you're a brilliant kid and you're, coming into kindergarten, coming into first grade, and you're behind, and it's like, seems quite a struggle.
Yes.
Quite a difficult thing to break out of.
Yes, it is.
Is it a meaningful, when you look at strategies for education environments, do you delineate strategies or delineate tactics based on socioeconomic understandings, or how do you structure the approach for like, okay, this kid might need this way and this kid might need that way?
Yeah.
Or is that a thing?
That's a great question. So So yeah, there's kind of this difference between predictive statistics and then like the data you would actually make a decision on, right?
Mm.
So even though socioeconomic status often predicts those literacy outcomes, in general, you don't make decisions on that. You make decisions on assessing every kid where they're at with like particular literacy outcomes, and then then intervening, because the intervention is going to be the same regardless of the kid's background.
Right. It's just, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just, what are they capable of at the moment?
Yeah.
Where have they come from and where are they now?
Exactly.
And then where can we kind of guide them as they go?
Yeah, exactly. And then one thing that comes to my mind too is mindsets, because you had mentioned something that kind of spurred this thought for me, that like there are kids that come in that struggle with literacy, like dyslexia, for instance. There are kids that come in that have dyslexia. It's not super common, but it's, it's out there, 5 to 10% ish of the population. And unless an educator understands, or a parent understands that struggle that the child is showing is not predictive of what they're capable of. They're actually capable of way more than they're currently showing.
Yeah.
And so like, if you have the mindset of like, oh, this kid's a struggling reader and they're always going to be a struggling reader, you're going to treat them in one way.
You're putting them in a box.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you look at them and you realize like, oh no, that's just where they are now. Like if I do the right things, they will be successful.
Yeah.
And for example, like some of the world's most famous and successful people were dyslexics, like Richard Branson of Virgin Atlantic. Yeah. He's dyslexic. People think Einstein was probably dyslexic based on some of the stuff in his writings. Ned Bush, President Bush's brother, dyslexic, highly successful, etc. So like there's a bunch of people that, despite those differences, learn how to think and reason and be like really, really smart in life.
Yeah.
And so anyways, that's just always a good reminder to.
I like that.
Yeah.
Just right. Like don't let what's a fair descriptor, like a symptom, define a person.
Exactly.
Or their capabilities.
Exactly. Like, statistically, I'm not just from my stutter and poverty and all that, but like statistically based on some other life experiences that I had, like I shouldn't have a doctorate. I shouldn't have, the level of financial success that I've had in my life.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, it's just interesting. Just remembering to see possibility and go for possibility rather than the boxes. So.
Right. Looking at it as glass half full.
Yeah, exactly.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love the idea of defaulting to optimism. I can't like sort of restate the argument that somebody gave me for that, but there's this really good argument that I like, which is basically like, why not start with optimism? And then if it doesn't work out, that's fine. Versus starting off with pessimism and then it's not going to work out anyways.
Yeah,
but
totally.
But what if it does? And might as well go for that.
Yeah.
Shoot for the positive outcomes.
Exactly.
So, okay. So now like the intersection of what I think about all the time and kids and the internet and stuff, and then what you've just described with literacy mechanisms and how that applies to socioeconomic statuses and how kids are getting set up for success. When I think about how do you keep a kid safe on the internet, one of the fundamental pieces I think about is behavior modeling.
Yes.
And how are we behaving as parents, and what do our kids see us do by default, and where do we put our attention?
Yeah.
So I think about this thing, attention as a currency, as a concept that goes through my mind, that like I think maybe we have two currencies as humans.
Yeah.
Time and attention.
Yeah.
And it's a limited currency because eventually they run out, especially time. And So are you spending it intentionally? Are you giving your time or giving your attention intentionally, or is it being taken from you? And so a lot of the technologies that we're exposed to as adults and as kids now too, these technologies are literally designed to take as much attention and as much time as possible, to the extent that the primary performance measurement for most of the world's major software companies is time. Time per day per user.
Wow.
So like eyeball time.
Yeah.
Because most of the world's major software companies are advertising companies. So like Google is an advertising company, Facebook is an advertising company. These are not, Google makes a search product. They are not a search company.
Yeah.
They're not an internet company. They're an advertising company that uses these other technical mechanisms in order to facilitate the sale of ads. And the way that you maximize the sale of ads is by maximizing the ability to measure who is viewing the ads and interacting with the ads. And in a digital environment on the internet, you can do that as long as you have eyeball time.
Right.
Because then you can follow them around and see, like, what do they do? What are they interested in? Who are they talking to? Where are they going?
Yeah.
You can analyze their pictures and see what kind of bag are they holding? What's the look on their face? What kind of mental state might they be in?
Yeah.
And so I think about behavior modeling. So if, we have to set the precedent for our kids of like, how are we behaving with these addictive mechanisms that are designed to addict us?
Yeah.
So it's normal that most adults on Earth are addicted to social media algorithms.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
So I like to refer to these social media algorithms as bottomless feeds. That's kind of like my image I like to create of like, because we all know that if you scroll and scroll and scroll on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and Snapchat and TikTok, that it's bottomless, right? They don't stop.
Yeah.
That's how you can identify an algorithm.
Yeah.
They're for the ones that we're exposed to day to day.
Right.
It's a very simple way to look at it. And so as parents, there's 8 billion people on Earth, 6 billion on the internet, 5 billion are on social media. So it's fair to assume that 4-point-something billion people are probably addicted to social media. Average screen time per day, depending on the country and the age, and this can vary from 4 to 14 hours.
Wow.
And most of those hours are going to be consuming bottomless feeds.
Yeah.
And so when I think about the importance of the frequency of conversation and like the diversity of vocabulary, but even just looking at like the frequency of conversation and like the type of conversation, what is the potential for a family to have frequency of conversation if their attention is being taken by an outside device or an outside object or an outside entity?
Yeah.
So now we're sitting here in the room together, but if I'm absorbed in a bottomless feed and an algorithm, then my attention is being given elsewhere and not to you.
Right.
And then therefore, similarly, it's going to be difficult for me to receive perhaps your attention.
Yeah.
And so like for a parent-child relationship, it just struck me that like, wow. So if I come home and I'm staring at my Instagram feed, every minute that I do that is a minute that I'm not having a conversation with my kid.
Yeah.
Or of course, a conversation with my spouse.
Right.
Or my dog. But my kid, of course, too.
Yeah.
Who is going to see me come home. What do I do when I first get home?
Yeah.
Where do I put my attention?
Yeah.
Where does it get taken?
Yeah.
Because of course it gets taken by chores,
Right.
But where else and how conscious can we be? Okay, so just wanted to sort of build up a bit of that context. What are your thoughts on that? Like, does it... I'm coming from a fairly biased view because I think about this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to draw some extreme assumptions and conclusions about like, gosh, this seems very damaging.
Yeah.
Like the potential for success in the current way that things are organized seems, I hate to say it, but speaking of optimism versus pessimism, it seems kind of low.
Yeah.
However, awareness, right? And like the potential for change. And there's a lot of positive opportunity here.
Yeah.
So just because something is messed up right now doesn't mean that like, oh, we're screwed.
Exactly.
It actually could mean that, oh, there's a lot of potential for positive change.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just stop there for a minute. How does that strike you with respect to like the addiction to our phones and the stuff that's on the phones versus the frequency of conversation?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I am going to share a personal vulnerability here type of thing. So like I mentioned situational poverty with my childhood, right?
Yeah.
And now we're talking about addiction. So my father had an addiction to alcohol. He was an alcoholic, and that's pretty much what spiraled the family into really bad circumstances in life. And so
that was part of the situation that.
yes,
Okay. Yeah.
yes. So basically squandered all of our money on alcohol and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like awareness with that word, like you need to kind of, if you are in that situation with addiction, you need to have a catalyzing moment, right? That's like the, some people would call it the come to Jesus moment type of thing, right? Like where you realize there's a problem, I need to do something different, right? And so I think that's the first thing is realizing I have a problem. I got to do something different, right?
Yeah.
And so then from there, it's like, okay, what am I going to do differently? And in general, this is true of myself. Like I myself scroll too much, right?
Of course, yeah.
And
absolutely, yeah.
And so like, I doubt that I will stop scroll. I doubt that I will put aside YouTube forever, right? Like
Right.
I would love to do that, but I doubt I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And so then I have a choice to make, like, how am I going to use YouTube? And so, for instance, with my son, there are very specific types of channels that we let him watch. It's like, you can watch this guy,
Yeah.
or this guy, or that gal, or whatever, but you can't do the others,
Yeah.
And so there's a couple channels that he does that are just mindless entertainment, watching somebody play a video game. But there's reasons why that channel, not others. And then there's other places where he goes and he learns, like there's this YouTuber called Veritasium, who's like awesome science and technology type of guy. There's Smarter Every Day, similar field.
Love that guy.
Yeah.
God, that guy's amazing.
Yeah. And so they're awesome. So like, if we're going to do it, we're going to try to narrow it to focus on the types of content out there that we all can talk about.
Yeah.
Because like, if he watches on his own, he'll come over and end up being part of a conversation where he's like, oh, that's, and he'll name some scientific concept or some, zoological concept, or like, where'd you hear that? And it's like, oh, on Veritasium or Smarter Every Day.
Oh,
like,
that's brilliant.
Okay,
man.
cool.
Love that.
So yeah, like if you're going to be on social media, like I would say, think about ways you can be intentional about it so that it builds community and builds conversation with your family, as opposed to everybody's doing their own thing.
Oh, good. Right. Use it as a tool to facilitate a conversation.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And that's very intentional.
Exactly.
And I think that's part of where I think about how, where's your attention as a currency.
Yeah.
And how, and same, speaking from personal experience, like I'm just looking at myself as like, oh yeah, like where have I put my attention?
Yeah.
From any given hour of the day.
Yes.
And to what extent?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's cool because that's the hard part about the internet as a whole thing is it's like this super powerful tool.
Yeah.
And it's all these amazing things and all these terrible things and all the things in between.
Yeah.
And then how do you help your kids develop the skills to identify which is which? Exactly.
Which then is more conversation, right? So, our family, it's not like an everyday type of conversation, but it's a regular conversation where we are analyzing what we see, like where we if we see a news article together, we'll talk about like, oh, that was interesting bias and like, bias on this side or bias on that side, either way, that was interesting bias,
Yeah, that's a good thing to recognize.
Yeah. Because that then gets back to that language comprehension that I was talking about. Like by having those kind of conversations where you're thinking together, reasoning together, arguing about stuff together, like not arguing in a mean way, but arguing about concepts, right?
Yeah.
That's what builds kids up so that they can then do it on their own, is you're modeling critical thinking.
I love that. I was speaking to a book publisher recently because I'm thinking about doing some books. I'm actively working on some books.
Cool.
And the book publisher they focus on kids' books. And so they focus on this social emotional learning thing. So it's like skills instead of rules.
Yeah.
I love that because I feel like the conversational stuff facilitates the skills.
Yes.
Instead of like what you were saying, even with the literacy learning, where it's like, oh, just memorize a bunch of things. That's like, I see that as rules.
Yeah.
Not so much as skills.
Right.
Whereas like the skills are the things that are really useful.
Right.
At least for me, like I'm heavily biased toward in that direction because like I don't like rules.
Right.
But I do like skills.
Right.
And I find that you can, the amount of value you can get out of a skill is a lot more than you can out of a rule.
Yeah.
And so then when I think about past behavior modeling and recognizing our own addictions to tech as adults, and then what are we showing our kids with how do we deal with these addictions?
Yeah.
Then it comes down to like okay, so what do we do? Like, what's the answer to this like kind of grim situation on like how are kids going to survive this bizarre time that we live in right now? And I think it's education and it's community.
Yeah.
And education specifically around skills.
Yeah.
So it's like skill development. And then community is being around others that are on the same journey and have the same values and the same principles.
Yeah.
Where you can meet up with other parents and say, oh yeah, you're have recognized X, and that's what I've recognized too, and I'm trying to address that, and here's what I'm trying, and what are you trying?
Yeah.
And here's, the conversations we've had. What kind of conversations have you guys had?
Yeah.
And the opportunity for that, like that's where I'm always looking, is like, where's the opportunity for education on these topics, and where's the opportunity for community?
Yeah.
And it's out there to an extent, but it's kind of why I do what I do. Like why I'm focused on this whole topic of kids on the internet is because I think both are lacking.
Yeah.
And so I want to try to facilitate whatever little bit of that I can, of like communication, or rather education and community.
Yeah.
And that's why so conversations like this, I think if, applying these like well understood strategies of like how do you build literacy, how do you build skills, how do you build conversations, and like what can that do for a kid? And I'm finding too, like, because you're talking about like really early ages, like learning how to talk.
Yeah.
And with the internet thing, I'm finding that actually it's perhaps younger and younger is on the ages of like when do you start to try to build the education and have the conversations with kids about what the internet is and what it holds in terms of good stuff and what it holds in terms of bad stuff, and like how to identify which is which.
Yeah.
Because I honestly find myself underestimating kids too often in terms of what they're capable of.
Yeah.
And I've had people tell me, I make videos talking about which video games are safe for kids, or which, how to configure a given, YouTube or something to be safe for kids. And I make the videos for adults.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, I'm speaking to parents.
Yeah.
But I've had a bunch of people tell me that they say, oh, I showed your video to my 7-year-old.
Yeah. And
they totally got it. And now they don't want to play that game anymore.
That's interesting.
Or they totally understand the problem.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was 7. Like, oh, wow. And I've had, for whatever reason, the age 7 has come up a lot, where I've had like parents tell me in person and online, like, I showed this to my 7-year-old and they totally got it. So there's a lot of positive potential for bringing it up early.
I totally believe that. And so you know what I was saying earlier about like children in the womb can understand language.
Yeah. So
we as a society in general underestimate kids a lot. And so like, there are a lot of people out there that believe that kids don't understand anything until they're, 4, or whatever,
Yeah.
And whereas like, no, their mind and their ears hear you even if their mouth has not gotten to the developmental place yet where they can communicate that back, right?
Yeah.
And so that then goes throughout their entire development. Usually their comprehension ability is far ahead of their production ability, what they can say.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
yeah, it's fascinating. And so then like with the idea of safety, when to be talking about those things, like I do think parents need to be having those conversations way earlier than they typically have them, because kids can get it. And then also like it's part of the idea of developing a relationship with your own kid. The goal, this is a bit of a tangent, but my wife and I believe very much in this concept called attachment parenting. That the idea is, our job is not to raise the next generation to be rule followers who look to us as authority to tell them right and wrong, although we do that, right? But rather, no, they're humans. We need to prioritize a relationship with them. And that relationship includes talking about surface things and deep things, and spending time together and a bunch of different things like that. And so we don't rely on rules. Like my kids don't really need rules because they have developed kind of the mental and emotional skills that you're talking about, that they know what's wise, and so they want to do what's wise and smart for them. And that, they're not 100% perfect in that, but
because that's the practice, right? Is trying it out and seeing how you go.
Right.
I love that. And so that's called attachment parenting.
Attachment parenting. Yeah. The idea that you want to develop an attachment with the other humans in your life, especially your kids and spouses.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
I look at little ones, I think in a similar way of like, here's a little miniature independent human.
Yeah.
Like you said, like they can't produce the sounds, but it's pretty clear that they know what's going on.
Yes.
I mean, and you can see these. My wife showed me a video the other day of a mom. She took this thing over so many years of how she would communicate with her baby.
Yeah.
And then, became a toddler and so on. And this little girl was communicating I think at like age 2, was doing like multi-word sentences and could actually read letters in written form and actually communicate, and the both sides of things you were talking about.
Yeah.
And like doing spectacular things at very young ages, and it's like, they just need the practice and the skill.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
It's amazing. So this is also a bit tangential, but it goes along with that really well. There was a short period in my career when I worked for the Idaho Department of Education where I was responsible for turning around a state assessment that we had done for kids with severe cognitive disabilities. So like these are kids with brain trauma or who have been born with severe cognitive delays and so forth. And the goal of that project was to change the assessment from a checklist of like, they can tie their shoes, they can, wash their hands, they can, it was like life skills was the big thing, to academic. Like, no, those kids can do things. Yeah. You just need to find a way to reach them and communicate with them, including things like, like electronic communication devices, boards where they can press it out to communicate on their behalf when they couldn't speak. Or other, assistive technology. And what was fascinating was like when I first got working on the project, I got hate mail from lots of people throughout the state because they thought I was being mean in terms of like demanding too much of these kids. But after the whole thing went through, and these people had to produce portfolios and videos of what kids could and couldn't do academically, I got comments from teachers of like, I didn't ever know these kids were capable of these things. And so it's like, it just proves like people can do, especially children, can do so much more than we give them credit for.
Right. Because we're so used to like a limited type of like, and again, being a computer guy, like I'll use kind of computer terms, but like inputs and outputs.
Yeah.
Like, what mechanisms do you have for inputs and outputs?
Yep.
And like, oh, your verbal mechanism isn't as developed as the next person, and so therefore I'm going to assume that you can't output anything.
Yep.
Rather than, oh, of course you can output something. It's just a matter of how.
Exactly.
And with what mechanism, and where can you develop skills on that thing?
Yep.
It's very beautiful.
Yeah. It's
that's the true, like, no child left behind.
Exactly.
So, to me,
Yes.
that's really great.
Right.
Well, good on you for charging through the criticism.
It was a good learning experience.
Wow. It must take a lot of confidence in what you're doing too, to say like, well, we're going to still try this thing out. I know you guys don't like it, you don't like the way it feels, but
yeah,
let's see what the outcomes are like.
Yeah.
Like good old science we were talking about.
Yeah.
Let's run the experiment.
Yeah. And that's one of those things where, so I am, I tend to be more like local control, like keep it local. I don't necessarily get behind big federal government, but that particular thing was because the federal government intervened.
Yeah.
It was like we as a state were in trouble because we were not living up to the federal policies in that particular domain.
Yeah.
And we had to do something. Otherwise we got our hands slapped. So
well, and that's just great. And it's a reminder too of like the individual nature of even the biggest entities, including the federal government and including departments and agencies and all these things that have hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. It's like, who are the individuals actually executing on the ideas?
Yeah.
So in this case, Idaho was lucky to have you executing on the idea and be like, no, look, guys, like, I think this is going to work. Let's, here's the goals and here's what we're trying to do. And you did it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that different states have different, types of outcomes depending on who's executing on the ideas.
I sure do.
So cheers to that, man.
Thanks.
Nice work.
Thank you.
Let's see what else I've got for you. So, AI. So I was doing a bit of research on your work, and I saw that the topic of AI had come up in some of what you've written about. I'd really like to talk about, because so you're a consultant that's dealing with these different educational bodies.
Yeah.
At state departments, districts, different states, different districts, different even individual schools.
Yeah.
I am struggling with matching up the current activities around the way that tech is being brought into educational environments with like what are the desired outcomes and like what is the science experiment there. And similar to your work on literacy, like it's hard to be evidence-based because we haven't done this before.
Yep.
We don't have 100 years of evidence on applying technology to elementary age school children.
Right.
Or any age school children for that matter. So AI is its own thing. Ed tech is maybe the umbrella, of exposing kids to technology in an educational environment. The AI is one of the pieces under the umbrella. You've got, by default now, kids are getting Chromebooks.
Yeah.
And like I found out that my kid had a Chromebook and had a Google account. Like I found that out after the fact. They're like, oh, okay, Google has begun their collection of profile. Because remember, Google is not a technology company. They're an advertising company. The reason why they do educational stuff is to facilitate the long-term goals of eyeball time.
Yep.
It's the same reason Apple was big in selling computers to education groups back in like the 90s and the 2000s was let's get them while they're young. Yes. And then with perhaps different desired like end goals, but capturing an educational environment is a very valuable thing to do. Yeah. So do you have thoughts on this big umbrella of ed tech or any of the pieces underneath it? And like, what are are there desired outcomes and goalposts that are trying to be met? Like what's this being structured like? Where's this coming from? And how's it being, what's going on, man? Like,
if you had asked me this question a year ago when I was working for a big ed tech company, I probably would have given a more, politically nice answer. But
now I got you on your own. You're an independent man.
Yeah.
So, your customers are still in there, But,
yes.
yeah.
Right. So So ed tech is like Google in the sense that like there's good stuff, and because of our reliance as a society on technology right now, you kind of need to have various ed tech solutions. However, it's all profit driven for the most part. There are very few nonprofit ed tech technology companies out there. Those ones I would venture to say are much more mission driven and trying to find solutions that are genuinely in the best interest of kids. Typical for-profit ed tech companies, they will say that they're mission driven and trying to serve kids well, and to an extent they are. And there's lots of good people. Like, don't get me wrong. There's lots of good people doing good work in the ed tech space.
100%. I mean, I would imagine it's fair to say that I bet a lot of people in Google's education programs are super interested in helping kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, especially in the for-profit sector, you can't avoid the fact that those companies are making every decision to squeeze as much financial profit out of the product as they can.
Yeah.
And so if that means not doing it as best as you can in the best interest of students or educators or or local decision makers, principals, curriculum directors at the district level, then they're doing that, and so it's an interesting thing because the financial market, like if you want to invest in anything, invest in education, ed tech and curriculum type resources. And the reason for that is because schools are publicly mandated, schools are publicly funded, schools will always need to buy a new thing every couple of years.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting market. So that's kind of where I start.
How is success measured when it comes to technology in an educational environment? Or is it measured on its own? Or like, I always look at things in that way. Like, what are the KPIs? What are the key performance indicators?
Yeah.
Like, how do we tell, how does a district or a state department of education tell, have we met our objectives by putting this stuff in place?
Oh man, you're going to get the cynic in me on this one. So they do not have KPIs that are like Google, right? So like that's at the individual user level. The type of things that ed tech companies are looking at is just strictly sales. So like,
well, okay, let me phrase it from a different side.
Yeah.
What are the KPIs of the customer in this case, of like the school district or of the Department of Education? How do they measure the performance of the tech that they're bringing in?
Okay, that's a good question. And honestly, it's going to vary a lot depending on the effectiveness of the leadership. So an effective
that makes sense.
school or district leader will look at a product that they adopt and they will set goals based on math or literacy outcomes. And they'll say, okay, we are collecting data in the fall, winter, and the spring, and we expect to see our students performing at this level or growing at this level between these two time periods, right? That's what effective leaders do. But sadly, a lot of leaders don't know to think in that way.
Yeah.
And so they know they have a problem with literacy. They know they need to adopt a new literacy program. They'll talk to their 2 or 3 neighboring school districts and get like opinion research on what do you guys use? Do you like it? Okay, we'll go with that. And then they'll adopt it.
Which, I mean, really makes a lot of sense because if I put myself in the shoes of a school administrator, all of a sudden I'm supposed to be competent at writing a request for a proposal on a technology system that I don't have deep expertise in, nor does anybody in my district.
Right.
We have the district has an IT department, but because of the nature of the funding of those things, they're often not the most highest caliber people, unless in and of themselves, they're sort of nonprofits of
exactly.
I'm down to take the small paycheck in exchange for helping the kids.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, like how are these, I mean, so I used to work for a defense contractor, and we ran a big IT outsourcing business. We did like $10 billion a year in IT.
Wow.
And the thing I saw the most was we had a deal. We were doing all the IT for the state of Virginia.
Yeah.
The state of Virginia has 98 agencies. So we did the IT for each of the 98 agencies, all the computers and the networks and the phones and the security cameras and all the things. And that was a really good one that actually ended up going to a bunch of lawsuits because it's hard to be a good customer. It's hard to be a good government tech customer.
Yes.
Because in order to be a good customer at something, you have to have in-house expertise on the thing.
Exactly.
How many schools have that? And that's where I struggle. So I see both sides. I recognize like that if I was a school administrator, I'd be doing the same thing all these other guys are doing.
Yeah.
Because how would I do otherwise?
Right.
And so like, how do we? Who's doing good work in the? So yeah, maybe like. Who's doing good work out there? Who can school administrators look to, or do you know, as like examples of success from putting out RFPs, choosing which systems to use, choosing whether to use them at all?
Yeah.
Who are strategic thinkers on this in the education world right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I'd be able to say like specifics, but generally speaking, what I've seen to be successful is where a district will like outsource the facilitation of the decision, like own the decision themselves, but bring in an outsider to help them make a good, strong decision. So the way that looks like in my world, for instance, with early literacy, if a school is adopting a new literacy curriculum that's going to last them 5+ years, that's going to cost them $500,000-$600,000 per school. And so
over that lifespan.
Yeah. Sometimes, and mostly up front, it's very expensive. And so it makes sense to hire somebody like me to come in and say, hey, I will bring in a rubric and I'll bring in specialized expertise and I will facilitate that conversation with your leadership team and your representatives of teachers and whomever you need to be on your committee. And we'll look at, 5 options that are, at the top of mind for you.
Yeah.
And then based on this rubric, we'll select the best one, for your context.
Right.
That's what I would advise because otherwise you end up going with word of mouth, or you go with something that looks cool or sounds cool, and then you get into it a couple of years and you're like, it didn't have the impact we wanted.
I mean, as an IT guy, one of the things, and I'm a consultant as well.
Yeah.
One of the things that I tell people, like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, I help people avoid expensive mistakes.
Yes, exactly.
Because technology in the world of tech is full of expensive mistakes.
Yeah.
So expensive that you can bring down entire companies with the wrong tech decisions.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
You can bury them in administrative overhead to the point where they can't even function.
I believe that.
And just bleed the bank account until it's gone.
Yeah.
And I'm really... it seems like such an interesting problem to solve.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, it'd be cool to identify who's out there and who's doing good stuff and who can administrators go and look at in addition to talking to their peers that are nearby,
right?
That they get to meet in person. Because naturally, that's how these things work,
Yes.
I mean, it's just an extension of my computer broke, and then I'm going to call my nephew, who's a computer technician guy.
Uh-huh.
Hey, Josh, what kind of computer should I get? Oh, you should get this one. And then I go get that one. And now that's the computer I've got.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then I meet some other guy and he's like, oh, you shouldn't have gotten that one.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's the same thing. I mean,
it is.
It's just people doing that at scale.
It is.
Well, I got 1,000 computers to buy and they're just for kids. And how do I go about this in a way where I'm not screwing over the kid? I'm not screwing over the IT department. I'm not screwing over my budget for the biggest, thing. I've got to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
And then once you make a decision, like you can't just change it.
Right.
That's one of the things too, is when tech is implemented. I learned this from the Defense Department. it's much more expensive to maintain a technology system than it is to buy it in the first place. Way more expensive.
That's interesting.
Like, could be 5x, depending on the lifespan.
Yeah.
So most computers, specifically like an actual laptop, will have a lifespan of like 3 to 5 years in a business environment.
Yeah.
You know, the ability to support a computer in a place that has a structured budget for a 5-year period of time is super expensive.
Yeah.
You know, and then now you're not just giving computers to the staff, now you're giving them to the kids too. And then the kids nowadays are burning them on purpose and breaking them and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, or they just fall out of the backpack.
Yeah.
And so it's, I hope that, I hope the internet facilitates administrators having access to like good ideas.
Yeah.
And how do you structure those ideas, and how do you structure your KPIs?
Yeah.
Like, what I love to think about when we're looking at something new, how do we measure success? Like if we say, okay, we currently have nothing, let's say we're starting from scratch. What does the future look like in 5? If we've done a thing, what do we look like in 5 years?
Yeah.
And then how do I measure that? How do I envision that and measure against that?
Yeah.
And then how do I establish my plans in the beginning to go there?
That's super important. You know, I would categorize that as like change management and theory of action type stuff, which again, most in the education world, in most fields, most people don't have strong background in those ideas.
Yeah, there's all these niche things, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's really good to be thoughtful about theory of action. You know, what are my ultimate outcomes that I'm trying to attain, and what exactly is it going to take to get there? You know?
Yeah.
That's super important.
And the complexity of reality, like administering a school district.
Yeah.
Therefore, like the administrator of a school district, of course, top line is administering the budget.
Yeah.
And then you're administering also your team.
Yeah.
And how, so if you start there and you go, okay, how amazing is my team? How amazing is my budget?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm kind of short on both. Let's see what we can get accomplished here and just see what happens. You know, like we got to do with what we've got.
Yep.
Because which school administrator has the best team and the best budget?
Yeah.
Outside of a handful of private schools or something, you know, you probably got those super fancy places in New York that have like the best educators from around the world and the biggest budgets and all that, but everybody else probably not.
It's fascinating. Superintendent role in particular. It's like there's a kind of a quip that people say is that the superintendent role is about, what is it? Buses, budgets, and boards. And so like, if you can't do those 3 things well, then you probably shouldn't be a superintendent.
Yeah.
So
it's funny that buses is first, because those things must be a nightmare to manage.
Yes.
All the bus routes and operations, and then the driver doesn't show up, and then, you know, you've got 50 kids that don't ever ride.
The first district that I worked in here in Idaho is, it's a rural district, not far from here. And when I was researching the district, I saw on their website that they have 3,500 miles of daily bus routes.
Whoa.
I was like, wow.
Per day.
Per day.
I mean, talk about a logistic. That's like the military guys often talk about, that it's not, the military is not a bunch of guys with guns, it's a logistics operation.
I can believe that.
The reason the US military is dominant is because we have global logistics.
Yeah.
You know, and then those logistics deliver the guns and the guys with the guns. But if you can't deliver them, then you can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So you've got this effectively like managing a busing operation. Like you said, that's the first thing that a superintendent has to do is be a bus manager.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's see here. So I'm curious for your opinions. I'll give you mine first, just to bias the conversation.
Okay.
So, you know, I've been in IT for 30 years, and I think I have a pretty good grip on what it means to like learn how to use tech.
Yeah.
And what that might mean for kids.
Yeah.
And I hear a lot of arguments around, well, we have to give our kids laptops when they're in 2nd grade so that they can learn how to use the thing that they're going to have to know as adults. But then I look at it, I'm like, no, I don't think I buy that.
No.
Because it's not an uphill battle to learn how to use a Chromebook.
Right.
The devices are brilliantly simple to learn.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been optimized to the nth degree. And now, sure, do you need to practice how to type and all that? But these are not high level skills.
Right.
I consider these to be, and I hope it's fair to say, like low level skills.
Right.
Now, in the tech world, there are certainly high level skills. There's all kinds of specialties when it comes to engineering and science and writing software and building systems and using technology in very complicated ways.
Yeah.
Now, those things, absolutely, you have to apply the underlying skill itself, as well as know how to use the technical tool in order to optimize the outcome.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this, like kids have to have laptops in second grade in order to be ready for the future?
Yeah. I think I tend to agree with the perspective that you're coming from. And the reason for that is, like, you even mentioned this a little bit. You mentioned a lot that had to do with the thinking processes, right? So technology is a tool, but in order to use a tool, you have to know how to think. If you don't know how to think, like building a house, like you might have modern, power tools, or you might have old hammer and saw, but like at the core, you need to know how to build a house that's on a strong foundation, that's going to have proper insulation. You need to know how to think through all the logistical variables and complications, and then you use the appropriate tool to help you do that well. And what I am particularly concerned about with the rise of AI, generative AI, is that people are beginning to offload their thinking onto the tools themselves. Right?
Yeah.
So like, more than ever, I think it is important for the education process, whether that's in a public school or a homeschool setting or whatever the case may be, just family conversations, needs to focus more and more on the thinking, the reasoning, the logic, all of that type of rational human thought.
Yeah.
So that kids can make wise selections of tools and then wise use of the tools that they select.
Is there a way to facilitate the learning of of critical thinking? Can let's say, okay, I'm watching this episode right here and I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I'm not really good at that myself, and so I don't know how to teach that to my kid, or like, I haven't been exposed to, via my line of work or whatever, to complex thinking processes. Is that something that adults can learn, that kids can learn? Like, where does that come from, and how do you acquire the ability to think critically?
That is a great question. I don't know if I have I don't know if I have a solid answer, but where my mind
I was
goes,
magically hoping you would or something, but
no, I mean, I can speak from experience. I don't know how this was developed in me, but like I know that in my family, my wife and I, with our kids, like, we're constantly talking about different angles on things. Like I mentioned earlier, if we see something, a news article or whatever, we will literally talk about the bias, and we encourage our kids, what do you think? And so asking them to give us their own thoughts, and sometimes they vary, and we don't try to then say, oh, but, and then try to prove their thoughts wrong. I think that's a big deal. I mean, there's some things that I will try to prove my kids to make sure they have.
like if they're going down like a dangerous line of thinking, well, don't adopt that quite yet, right?
Yes, exactly. But in general, asking them good questions and then modeling it myself to say, like, if I'm struggling with something, for instance, I can say, I'm trying to figure out how to do X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's fixing the like right now I have to fix one of the blinkers on my van. I don't know how to do that yet, but I'm going to research that, and I think it's this, and just model that thinking out loud. I think that's the best way we can do it. we're constantly solving problems as humans. And so the more that we can make that process visible to our kids and engage them in the process, that I think is helpful.
Interesting. Okay, so I captured a couple things in my mind there. Exposing them to your problem-solving process.
Yeah.
Which I think in and of itself, I could see that being, you have to be very intentional and very patient.
Yes.
And have some spare cycles and some spare times to like, look, I need to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And I'd rather just solve it right away, but let me show my kid how I go about solving this or thinking through it or let them watch me or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the other piece was asking good questions.
Yes.
And ironically as it might be, I think that AI could be really useful for parents that might want to have a coach on how to ask good questions and how to ask. I'm assuming that open-ended questions are probably better than closed-ended questions. And so if we're saying good questions, like in my mind, a good question is open-ended.
Yes.
It's not like, do you want choice A or B? It's like, what would you like?
Exactly.
And using AI to help ask good questions, that could be a really cool thing for parents to play with.
I can see that.
And for kids to play with too. Now, I think my opinion is that kids shouldn't use the current generative AI systems without parental oversight because the systems are so problematic and fraudulent in their nature. But I imagine this beautiful thing that could occur of like, well, let's figure out how to ask good questions together.
Yes.
If we don't know why is our blinker broken? What questions should we be asking? And you could put that into ChatGPT or something and probably get some really interesting results.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a way to learn or just like exercise critical thinking, even if maybe the concept itself is like not like if you haven't experienced it a lot.
Yeah.
Like I like to look at these generative AI systems as thinking partners instead of as like homework doers.
Right. Right. And then if you do that, so as thinking partners, I do like the idea of helping generate questions. I think that's a great idea. And then I think the biggest thing that I've been wondering about is like, when you use them as a thought partner, how do you balance having enough content knowledge or background knowledge yourself to know whether it's junk that was put out or not,
Well, what I do is I ask the AI. So I use one called Claude a lot. It's just like ChatGPT, just one of the competitors. And this will be the same for Gemini and for the one that's built into Facebook called Llama. You can ask these systems to give you both sides of whatever argument or whatever position they might reply with. And so by default, these systems are very agreeable. And most of them are very sycophantic, where they are like defaulting to like, wow, Steve, that was the best idea I've ever heard. And it's just a garbage idea, Boy, that's amazing, with exclamation points and emojis and all this crap. Whereas like you can actually you can tell the AI to like, tell me why it's a good idea. And it'll do that. And then you go, okay, now tell me why it's a terrible idea. And then it'll do that. And then you can say, okay, now compare the good idea versus the terrible idea and tell me like, how can I fill the gaps to solve for the terrible parts?
That's interesting.
And it'll actually like, if you ask it to, you can have it give you both sides. And so like, if you ask it to help you think about like, what's a good question to ask, whatever it comes back with, tell it to tear it apart. Tell it like, tell me why that's BS. And it will. It'll tear it apart.
That makes sense.
But only if you tell it to do that. Right. Otherwise, it definitely won't do that.
Otherwise it'll praise you and say you're amazing.
Like, oh, it's fantastic. They actually had to like roll back one of the ChatGPT versions recently because it was too sycophantic. People were messing with it and like giving it like the worst ideas. And then it would come back and be like, you should do that. That's great. Okay, so I want to get into a couple other things here. Along the lines of like who's doing good work and like who are the smartest players out there? Who are people, aside from yourself, I guess, that parents should follow and pay attention to online when it comes to education and learning and child development? Who do you like out there?
Oh, that is a really good question, and I don't know if I have the right answer for it. Um, because I try to stay away from social media, so I don't follow a lot of people.
Nice.
Um,
Or who have you come across in your career
yeah,
that's like a bright star in the space that's just thinking in unique ways and like trying
Yeah.
new things?
yeah. So when it comes to literacy, one of the organizations out there that's probably got the best reputation right now is a group called the Reading League. They're like a think tank type organization, so they have a lot of good stuff. Also in the literacy space, the International Dyslexia Association is top notch. Like if any parents need help related to kids that are struggling with reading, I would go to their website. And then who else would I think about? I probably need to think about that before I give you two more, because there are other organizations that come to mind that I know are popular, but given today's current political context, I'm not sure that they would be broadly applicable.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Things do change from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and some of them have certain bents that some people, might think yes, and other people would be like, oh no,
Yeah.
So
That's the modern way, isn't it?
yes,
Everything's got to be divisive
Yeah.
and,
yeah,
team sports.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about that.
Well, that's good. Well, I mean, two
yeah.
good ones already. I mean, that's, yeah. And then if anything, and then what's your website? Because like maybe we can say like, hey, just follow
Sure.
you, and then
Yeah.
where do you kind of exist online?
My website is Veritas Ed Consulting. Veritas, the Latin word for truth, ed for educational, and then consulting.com. So,
Nice. VeritasEdConsulting.com,
Yeah.
and you have a blog up there
I do.
and stuff. Cool.
Yeah. I try to write about things that are interesting to me, mostly literacy, school leadership, and like whole system change management, school improvement type stuff. Those are my areas that I enjoy the most.
I love the idea of bringing scientific approaches to things, because where you can,
Yeah.
it sure is nice to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you could change, let's say you're king for a day, and there's as few constraints as possible,
Uh-huh.
and you could change just one thing about how kids are set up for success today,
Oh man.
and you could like wave a magic wand, genie in the bottle. What's the one thing? What's the top of the list?
Wow. Parental involvement in education. You and I had talked offline at one point about homeschooling.
Yeah.
I don't think homeschooling is the answer for everybody,
Yeah.
but I do believe that for those who can participate more deeply in their child's education, and guide the decisions about what's happening with the thinking, the reasoning, the content, all of the developmental processes, the more involved you can be in your own child's education, the better your child is going to be.
And if you're okay, so if you're a parent listening to this conversation right now, and you're thinking like, gee, I wonder how I stand or where I'm at, like what questions or question could a parent ask themselves to see, like, am I where I want to be? Are there other things that I could explore? Like, how do we self-assess?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say start with the question, what do I want my child to be learning? And that's a very broad question, and it can go in a lot of different directions. But, you might find that your local public school is doing exactly what you want and what you need for your kid. Or you might find that, I want to go deeper in music, for instance, like the typical public school is not able to offer music education these days, in elementary in particular, right? And so if you have a child that's very musically gifted, you may want more in that domain. Or you might want more for your child in the perspective of, hey, I really want them to learn logic and other languages, or, whatever the case may be. And so depending on your answer to that question, what do I want my child to be learning? Then it can set you on a path of, well, I've got choices out there. Most of the people in the United States have some sort of school choice around them, and think about whether that's something you want to take advantage of or not. And again, I don't say that, like, I've been in public education for many, many years, and the public schools serve a very, very important role in our society.
Yeah.
But when you're thinking about, your audience member of people who are very, very intentional about their kids and what they want for their kids, you have a lot of freedom to pursue very specific learning outcomes for your kids that you wouldn't have had 20 years ago. But you have them now.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have access to, like, the internet facilitates a lot of that, I would imagine.
Exactly. Yeah, there's charter schools, there's homeschools, there's all sorts of variety of all of those.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I love that idea. And I think it's one of the challenges in life is, like, how do you approach the potential for something in an unconstrained way?
Yeah.
In a way where you go, there are no rules.
Yeah.
I don't have to do it the normal way just because that's the way it's done.
Exactly.
I can actually identify an unconstrained set of objectives and say, like, if I want my kid to learn X, Y, and Z, or to be capable or to have the ability to produce certain outcomes, what are those things?
Yeah.
And then, so what you're saying is that you can sort of query your local schools to see, like, what do they focus on?
Yeah.
And then identify if there's any gaps, and then how do you fill those gaps?
Exactly.
How do you go about querying with a local school? What's the most efficient way to determine, does this school versus that school potentially meet my desires and my objectives?
Right. Well, I mean, at a very simple level, there's online websites, like for realtors websites and those type of things, that take publicly known data about public schools and allow you to compare them. Right. So that's a kind of a beginning point. But I would encourage conversations. Like, if there's something in particular you're looking for, you can always call up a local principal and say, hey, I'd love to have a conversation about my kid, that's currently at your school or currently at a different school, but I'm curious about your school. Usually administrators are more than happy to have those kinds of conversations where parents are coming in and just, like, curious. Administrators, it's hard for administrators when parents come in and are kind of like, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's a totally different conversation. But people who are just curious and open, have a conversation. And then same thing, if you are curious about other alternatives, charter schools, like, ask people in your network if you know anybody that's involved with charter schools and what kind of things you can learn. You can go on their websites, find their mission, find the things that are important to them. And then same thing with homeschooling options. There are lots of resources out there on the internet that you can see what the different types are, different models and so forth.
I think that's cool to be able to approach a school administrator with curiosity.
Yeah.
And also, just to throw it out there, I kind of like the idea of not everything has to be for everybody.
Right.
And I think it's actually great and totally fine if you have a set of objectives and you go to a school, even if it's the school your kid's currently at.
Right.
And the administrator says, we do have some programs that do 3 of the 5 things you want, but not the other 2. That doesn't have to be upsetting, or that doesn't have to be a bad thing. That's, like, totally fine. And you can say, like, awesome, thank you very much. And, like, how do you suggest I go about filling that gap?
Yeah.
What's your experience as a school administrator? Who do you know that's good at those things?
Yeah.
So it's not right. Because there's a lot of this stuff where parents we see videos all the time of people going to school board meetings and yelling at people. And it's like, these are just individual humans too. We just have collaborative conversations, or exploratory conversations together.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I enjoy history. So sometimes when I think about things, my mind goes to the, like, historical background. And so when we think about public schools in the United States, they were designed to meet a very specific purpose. And that is, we wanted to scale up a common education, a common free education for every child in the country. And they have done that, and they've done it very well, but it's also, there's other variables in there, like the school boards. And so ultimately the local school board is responsible for every unique district. And so, when it comes to differences you may have, we're at a state in our history in the United States where you do have choices. And I think a lot of parents maybe some parents are unaware of just how much choice they have.
Yeah.
You mentioned the example of this local school might have 2 to 3 things out of your list of 5. There are situations where you can actually have your kid go to the local public school for part of the day, not the whole day. And they take care of part of it and you take care of the rest.
Really?
So yeah, that is a possibility. I mean, it's going to depend on the flexibility that your local school district has and is willing to have. But generally that is a possibility.
Oh, interesting. Like a very hybrid approach.
Yeah. We have some friends that are doing that with a local charter school. They want, I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but they wanted something where their kids could be very involved in like math type learning. And there's a local school that is does advanced math, like 9th grade with 6th grade and so forth.
Wow. Yeah.
And so they were just talking to me a couple of weeks ago about having their kid go there for like the math work, but then they're doing a homeschooling type thing for everything else.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I love the like new ideas. It doesn't have to be shaped the way you thought it had to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. So last question for you. If you could just like leave a final message here or just leave a message for parents on like, here's like the one thing I wish every parent knew about education, or I wish every parent knew about like how to set up a kid for success.
Yeah.
What might that be?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that matters the most is that kids are most successful when they know they have at least one adult in their life that cares deeply, deeply, deeply for them. And, ideally that's a parent. It could be a grandparent or a teacher or whatever the case may be. But we're all social beings. And, you were talking about relationships earlier. Relationships matter. And so that's of utmost importance, is that kids have relationships where they know they're loved and cared for, right? And so from there, if they've got that, they will likely succeed. And then kind of second to that is that language development thing. Like, I would encourage families to be talking to and with their kids as much as possible from before birth and onward.
Yeah.
And encouraging every type of conversation you could possibly imagine, and asking kids questions all the time to get them to be thinking for themselves. If you can do that, then your kid's going to grow up to be a strong thinker and reader.
Oh yeah. I love that. So it's like, so if we could ask ourselves, like, how many questions did I ask my kid today?
Yeah.
Would that be a good thing for parents to ask
That'd
themselves?
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
And then if it's like, oh shoot, I haven't asked them a big open-ended question today.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I do that before we go to bed.
Yeah. And an easy one is always why. Like, hey, why are you thinking such and such? Because that forces them to put it into words.
Love that. It's my favorite question.
Yeah.
Steve, thanks, man.
Yeah.
That was
pleasure.
A really good conversation. I learned a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.